and thank you for joining us for the Tuesday Tidbit on Decision Making. This voice here you hear, my name is Rochelle, and we are going to hear from Carrie Holmes this morning. She's going to walk us through this presentation and teach us more, but we just want to open up with saying thank you so much for joining us and making this good decision to spend our morning together. Welcome, Carrie.
Thanks, Rochelle. It's always a pleasure to do our Tuesday Tidbits. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. I don't even think of it as being a job, just a conversation with all the friends I've yet to actually see face to face. So welcome, right? In the chat, you'll notice, or for those of you that are fresh to us, there's a chat function. Please feel free to pop in. Let us know where you're joining from today. I'm joining you from my deck, actually, outside. And so any bird noises and such, I hope you enjoy that. And yeah, so if you can just pop that in there, that would be great. And awesome. If you have any questions, right? Go ahead, Michelle.
People from all over the province. It's so cool to see. Lots from Altona. So hey, everyone from Altona. And Carrie, of course, from Interlake area. Take it away, Carrie.
Awesome. Thank you. So decision making, like Rochelle said, great day to make this decision to join us. And we're so thankful that you're here with Workplace Education Manitoba. Our vision, mission, or values, or I guess it would be our mission, is to help people to develop essential skills that are needed for work, learning, and life. Now, I've included two websites here for you, our mothership, I call it, the WEM.MB, but also our local WEM Interlake. And there's where you will find our upcoming workshops and tidbits that we have listed. Pretty soon, we will be opening our West centers. Now, for those of us that live in the Interlake area, I've had people say, West Selkirk, I've heard of East Selkirk, but I don't know what West Selkirk is. And I'll tell you, West Selkirk isn't a location. It's where we do our upgrading for essential skills. So for those of you that are looking to do any upgrading, computers, numeracy, all sorts of those essential skills, which I'll talk about in just a moment, you will be able to do that at our West Center, which is located across from the library, right in the same building as the Red River College. So it's a beautiful new location for us. Lovely, gorgeous blue walls. You will love it. Very calming. And feel free to check us out. You can go to our website and find out more information there. Our vision is that all Manitobans have access to the essential skills, knowledge, and training required to determine and pursue their goals related to learning, the workplace, and life. And for those of you that are familiar with our tidbits, you know that I preach on about how each one of these sessions can be related to workplace as well as our everyday lives as well. We would like to express appreciation to the following for supporting the development of this continuous learning skills curriculum. Thanks to Employment and Social Development Canada and Manitoba Education and Training, as well as Human Resource Skills Development Canada and Entrepreneurship Training and Trade, we are able to provide these workshops and these tidbits free of charge, just like our upgrading at our West Center is all no cost to you. It's all funded, so we're thankful for that. And again, information here with our website or info@wem.mb.ca if you need more information about our funding. Now, the essential skills. Some of you are familiar with this cute little pyramid. We look at our essential skills. Let's take our eyes to the bottom row here, to the blue. Reading, document use, numeracy, aka math. I know maybe that word scares some of us. Writing and digital technology. Those are the essential skills that are needed in the workplace. And I would suggest in everyday life as well. Just think about the work that you do in and outside of your home. And then we add on that second layer here, the green layer of oral communication, which in my not so humble opinion is something that is lacking hugely in life in general. All you have to do is open your browser on your computer to find that there's a lack of communication worldwide, which leads to all sorts of interesting situations. Couple that with working with others, the importance of working with others, thinking skills, and continuous learning. So each one of these essential skills, each one of them, because they're skills, we can build on them, which means we can get better, right? So today, with decision making, let's define it here as the capacity to find avoidance or resolution strategies to collect and use information from diverse sources, which sometimes when we make decisions, we should maybe do that a bit more, to develop a clear understanding of a problem and its root causes, and evaluate strengths and weaknesses of alternative solutions, including potential risks, benefits, and short and long-term consequences. Now, I remember speaking with a group of children not that long ago, maybe a year ago, about the word consequence. And they saw consequence as a bad thing, right? They could only think of bad consequences for doing things wrong. And the truth is, friends, there are good consequences, right? When we make great decisions, there's consequences behind that. So to make informed and balanced decisions appropriate to the goal, context, and available resources are what we're focusing on today. We want to be able to make those decisions based on the facts, on what's bringing us closer to our goals, and of course, what do we have as resources, what's available to evaluate the effectiveness of selected solutions for future situations, aka learn from our mistakes and to learn from our successes. So to think back, I was speaking with a fellow yesterday. I guess that was Sunday. We're on Tuesday, right, guys? On Sunday, and he's an older gentleman, and he said, I look back on my life and I see a lot of poor choices that I made, and living with those consequences now as an adult. And my heart kind of dropped just a little bit. But he was taking it from the stance of, yeah, I made those decisions in the past, they're in the past, and we're moving forward. And I hope each one of us can do that as well, to not get stuck, right? To not get stuck with what we've done, but to be able to move forward. So in our little tidbit today, we're looking at describing different processes and strategies to determine best decision-making strategies, customized even to your workplace. I want you to keep that in mind, and to make decisions to accomplish well-defined tasks. And I think sometimes this is where, as leaders especially, we need to pull up our socks to make sure that the tasks are well-defined. I know in the past I've been on the receiving end of tasks that weren't well defined. And guess what? We're not meeting expectations then as employees. And maybe we didn't ask the right questions. There's your oral communication. But when we're able to make decisions on well defined tasks, we have a better chance of making the right decisions. Now, a few questions for you to consider. How many of you, by show of thumbs ups, would say that you make decisions easily, that you don't really labor too hard about decisions, that you're able to go forward with it? You just want to give me a thumbs up with your emoji at the top, that would be great.
Awesome. We've got a couple strong decision makers in the group.
Right on. This is awesome. Now, I would love to know one day over pizza, maybe in Altona or Winkler, how many of you, Rochelle, we're going on a road trip. How many of you would say that those decisions that come easily, were they the right decision? Or do we, it's a tricky one, right?
Yeah, I see tears in some of the emojis, so they're not
Yes.
always easy, are they?
Right. Yeah, we're all crying a little bit, both with laughter and with sadness. Now, I'll speak on behalf of Rochelle here. I know with the second question, am I required to make decisions in my work? Yes. Yes, we are, right? And I'm sure most of you are as well. And how do we use these decision-making skills outside of work? When do we use them? Anybody want to pop some thoughts into the chat?
We see that some decisions come easily and some are quite difficult, and we do have regrets too with some of these decisions, and I thank you for sharing. And some are mentioning even that it's every day, like this is a daily thing, which is kind of funny because even the jobs we have right now, maybe we've made career choices and have to make decisions because of other decisions that were made in our former workplace. But outside of work, yeah, preparing meals, absolutely good input, because a lot of people say they would cook all day long if someone else would just plan the menu.
Yes, I was just gonna say that. That's my cry emoji coming out on what's for dinner, like.
Yeah, good input.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
yeah, it can be challenging, right? And I think the thing is, that's what 3 a.m. is for, to think about all those things that we didn't do right and whatnot. So how do essential skills fit in with this? Well, it's about reasoning, right? So that could be numeracy, decision making, problem solving, thinking skills, and as I said earlier, communication skills. These strong thinking skills are essential to improving success in the workplace. So, for example, knowing how to deal with a difficult customer or even managing your workload effectively. And we're living in the land of the COVIDs here. I think that many of us have probably had some tough decisions to make. And we're living with like you said, Rochelle, like some of those decisions we made previously could be affecting us now. We can look at making better decisions. They can increase our efficiency, definitely, revenue, productivity, leadership, and even risk taking and innovation. Now, the people that I not necessarily work with, since we're talking about workplace learning and life, the person that I chose to spend all of eternity with is less of a risk taker than I am, which I'm not going to lie, has saved us a few times. And it's interesting to watch, totally opposite people come to a decision, come to a conclusion, and how they get there. And so for each one of us today, I invite you to think about, am I a risk taker or am I risk adverse or somewhere in the middle, that tolerance for ambiguity that we talk about with change? Now, big fat question, Rochelle, maybe you can help me out here. What are the barriers to confident decision making? So folks, if you want to pop that into the
Well,
chat, right? Yeah, go ahead.
well, that's my barrier. I can't make a decision about how to answer your question. So maybe everyone can help us out in the chat. What are some of those barriers? I know I hear over and over, it's so often it's fear because we just don't know what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
And I just experienced this with someone at a point of sale moment where I had booked a hotel room and I showed up and they gave my hotel room away and they didn't know what to do and how to make the decision because no one had educated them on what they were allowed to do. So they were terrified. It worked out in the end, but I think fear, and certainly as we see in the chat, not having all the information makes it hard to make a decision. That's absolutely key. Thank you, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. I was talking, or I wasn't talking, I was listening to the radio this morning, and there's a fellow from Steinbach. He sounds like a really awesome place to get burgers and fries. He was talking about how, with some of the changes, oh my, lots of phone calls today, guys. Some of the changes that have happened over the weekend with the increase of COVID, that they've decided to close their business for a little bit, to put it on pause. And he said the biggest struggle is exactly what you're saying, is not knowing what's coming next, right? And so some of us are living in that land. You take a pandemic aside, and we still have that, right? Some of those fears of not knowing what's coming up next.
I love one
Some
of
of
the
Yeah, go
comments
ahead.
too, that a lack of experience or training can be such a barrier, and that's huge. And I love that we can acknowledge that and admit that, because usually we don't know what we don't know, and that impacts our decision making.
Well, and I think as leaders, we need to remember that sometimes we sit in a different chair, right? And we've forgotten what it's like to be new, or we've forgotten what it's like to receive the instruction to just make a decision on it when we may not be privy to all the information. So, right, it could even come down to that, or this idea that not even knowing how to make a decision. So you guys said
Yeah.
it, we have a fear of getting it wrong, right? Yeah. Um, you may have an idea that there's only one best solution to a problem. And I know people like that it's, I'm the type of person that I like to fail first, get it out of the way, and then be able to move on to whatever's right. Now, if I get it right the first time, awesome, even better. But for me, an idea of failure, it's not really a failure, it's just an opportunity to go a different direction. But I do know people where that's not even an option, right? And those are our thinkers, people who are analytical, who like a lot of details before making a decision. Where some of us are like, well, let's just plow ahead and see what happens. So it can really depend on even our communication style. This is a truth too. Some people don't know when they should consult others and when they need to make that decision for themselves. And I would say that for some of us, it would perhaps be how much autonomy do we have in our workplace, or how many times have we worked in an environment where all the decisions were made for us and we were essentially, I don't want to say drones, but that's really what's coming to mind, so apologies, robotic, right? We never really had the chance or the opportunity to make decisions. They're always being made for us. So then we don't know when we should consult and when we should just do it. And then the question begs, do you feel confident in decision making, or are there moments of doubt? And I would say, and you can throw me some thumbs up if you agree with this, that there are moments of doubt. We don't really know. And I think it goes back to our earlier conversation about fear. So if you are working as part of a group, establishing criteria together, right, it ensures that everyone's involved and that knows what the decision will be judged against. Because that's another part. What does success look like? So I know in our line of work, what is successful for me will look different than perhaps my project manager. What does success look like to them? Is it how many people signed up for this webinar? Is it how much people are engaging through our chat and our thumbs up, right? So each one of us, depending on the seat we're in, will judge what success looks like. Now, I'm going to pause on that. I had a thought, but I'm going to listen to the other side of my brain that says, shut it and keep moving on. Guys, I have so many stories. I just get lost in my stories sometimes, so I'll keep moving forward here. We want to be able to collect the information, right, that we need to make an informed decision. So those of us that are jumping feet first, maybe the time is to pause and to collect that information first. Usually we're making decisions or a choice between alternatives. So making that successful decision depends on choosing the best alternative. You want to judge each alternative against the criteria that you've selected, especially if we consider this idea that we're making a decision based in a group, okay? The alternative that meets all of the criteria is probably the best one, usually, right? I think we would agree with that. Then we need, as this person is doing, take the leap, right? And take those actions needed to implement it. I would like to think that in our workplaces, one of the biggest things that we're looking at are what are the resources? And I don't just mean money, but what's our time that we have to make the decision? Or who's involved? Who are our people resources? And being able to make sure that we've covered all of that. We're looking at from a whole picture. Now, this is the part, and many of you have heard me talk about this before. If we don't ever evaluate, if we never go back and look at, was this decision successful? Then what was the point, right? We want to review the outcome of the decision, look at, if I was to face the same decision again, would I make the same choices or would I make different ones? And I told you about that gentleman I was speaking with on Sunday, and he has a few that he would have done differently. And I'm sure each one of us, like I said, that's what 3 a.m. is for, to look back and go, yeah, I probably would have done that a little bit differently or completely differently, or I would have chosen not to do it at all, right? There's a lot of different questions. Let's try not to save those for 3 a.m. Let's insert that into our workday and say, okay, why would I have done it differently? And do I actually know what my outcomes would have been had I chosen something differently? So,
and Carrie, one of our participants brings up a great point in the time it takes to make a decision, and now you're touching on the time it takes to review the decision. So it's bookended on each end, which is critical.
It really is, and it's important for us to add that in as part of our resource of time, right? To know that this is going to take some time to evaluate. It takes time to make the decision and gather. Now, not all of those decisions, we don't always have the luxury of time, do we? Some decisions need to be made quickly, and as we have here, confidently. And often we see barriers to confident decision making, such as these ones, right? Those time constraints that we're talking about. What about personal bias or our comfort zone? Oh my gosh, we could go on for days about that one. Fear, we brought up. conflict or even the fear of conflict. And what happens when we get stuck in group thinking that we're just going with the flow as opposed to maybe bringing up different ideas or that idea of conflict again? Paralysis of analysis. Anybody here know that they do that where they, well, for those of us on the outside of that, we call it overanalyzing. For those of you who do this, you're just analyzing. I get that. And thank you, because we need you. But being mindful that we don't get stuck in the analysis of it, where we're, well, if this happened, then this could happen, then this could happen. The what ifs, right? And then, of course, lack of experience, which we spoke about earlier. Why is having confidence then in the decision you make important? So we've spent all this time, again, resource, effort, gathering information, and then we're taking that leap as we showed in that slide earlier. Why is it important for us to have confidence in the decision that we're making? It allows us to move forward, right? It can boost our self-esteem and help us to make good decisions in the future. It's not to say that just because we're confident in the decision that we made, that we will always be confident or that we will always make the right decision, but it can help lead us to that idea of moving forward. And each time we make a more confident decision, we're just going to keep adding to that toolkit of decision making. Because guess what? We start to see all of these different things, right? Ideas, challenges, problems. Are we in a crisis mode, right? Competition, even this slide here gives us a good idea of what it's like to make decisions, and it can be really challenging. Now, if we look at it from a leadership standpoint, our supervisors have a number of responsibilities, such as feedback and coaching, performance development, and communicating expectations. And that's all part of this decision making. How much are we of that power or empowering them? How much of that lending of power are we doing as leaderships? And then if you consider your own workplace, and for each one of us, this will look quite different. Do you know what the appropriate channels for decision making are at your workplace? What is your level of delegation that you've been given? How much tolerance do you have on either end if the decision goes not so great? Is that okay? Do we have time to turn the bus around, right, and get back on the right track? So it's important, if you don't know the answer to this question, to find out. Okay, and this is kind of plays off of this, a similar question. What can you decide for yourself, and when do you need to include your supervisor or even upper management in decisions? And again, depending on the type of decision, some of you are thinking, well, Carrie, it would really depend, what's at cost, what's at stake here? And I would agree with you. So what if, here's a what if, you have seen a mistake being made, especially when it comes to decision making. We may not always agree with the people in authority within the workplace, but we can still have respect. So even though, and I've seen this happen 1.5 million times, exaggeration just a little bit, that we may not always agree with the decision being made, but we can still respect the person. And I think that that's an important thing moving forward. We live in a land of instant everything, don't we? Right? There's this urgency that is in so much of our modern life that we end up confusing what is important with what is merely urgent. And we had a big conversation on this not that long ago, the difference between importance and urgency. And if you missed it, coming up in September, we'll be doing a time management workshop, which talks about these very things. It's important to realize that urgency is not the problem. Sometimes that's someone else's failure to plan, right? It becomes a crisis. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is urgent. So when the problem is that when urgency is the dominant factor in our lives, importance isn't. So, and this is getting kind of muddled, but what we're trying to say here is it's important that what we regard as first things are urgent things. So we're caught up in what we're doing. We don't even stop to ask if what we're doing really needs to be done. And that's a whole other conversation on prioritizing and our time management. So again, this time management matrix can help us to focus on what is important and what is urgent, especially when it comes to our decision making. So this is a little sneak peek at what's coming up for you in September. This Eisenhower matrix, Covey's also, hopped in on this as well. So the difference between importance and urgent. Now, because we tend to respond to urgency, I know I'm the worst for this, we tend to deceive ourselves or others into believing that urgency itself indicates what's important. And it's not true, friends. Just because something seems urgent doesn't necessarily mean it's important. We could spend a lifetime dealing with urgent yet very unimportant activities. So we see the effects on other people in our workplace if we don't agree on the same priorities of urgency and importance. So this is especially true if you're reporting to a variety of different people, or if you have many different projects going on. We could fall into this debate of what is urgent and important. But before we go today, I just had a few hundred questions here for you to consider, okay? And these are those, I call them journaling thoughts. I'm not necessarily inviting you to journal, but consider these thoughts. Do others influence your decision, or are you firm in your own judgment? So do you waffle back and forth? Do you lack that confidence? What do you think is the most important step in decision making? For some of us, it's gathering information. It could be consulting with other people, which would be part of that gathering, doing our own. Is it just making the decision? Is it reviewing what happened, right? Do we establish that criteria, collect, find alternatives? Okay, so all of these questions, and you can see, excuse me, question number 2 is gathered up in these final bullets here. But being able to be confident in the decisions that we are making. Now, before we close, again, I wanted to bring to your attention our website and also our email address. Now, like I added earlier, we invite you to these tidbits as a part of getting a snapshot of what we do in a bigger sense. So, for example, this little tidbit, a half hour, is expanded into a half-day session. And so those are types of things we love to bring into your workplace, to share with your teams. We have amazing interaction. And Rochelle, if you wouldn't mind just speaking to West Center for a moment. And the different West Centers that we have. We have Brandon, Selkirk, Dauphin, Swan River, Winkler, Steinbach, Winnipeg, Flin Flon, The Pas, and Thompson. So we're really reached far spread throughout the province here to bring you that workplace essential skills training, which is what WEST stands for. And within it, we have qualified staff who will help you with upgrading. And like I said earlier, those centers will be opening up in the fall here. We will be adhering to some pretty strict COVID protocols, but we look forward to being able to interact with folks, you guys in person. I want to thank everybody for joining. Thank you for bringing up those amazing points. And we hope that you have an amazing day. Take care.